From the Ghost Tactical Production Studio, welcome to Tactical Tuesday, streaming live on YouTube and simulcasting as always on GunChannels.com. To check out our entire lineup of videos, podcasts, and live shows, please visit our website, www.ghosttacticalproductions.com. What is going on, my Ghost Squad? Welcome to Tactical Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, March 19th, 2019. We want to send a big shout out to everybody watching us live. And if you're listening to us in replay, either in video or in podcast form, welcome to the show. Welcome to the channel. We hope you enjoy. We are live as always on YouTube and simulcasting as always over on GunChannels.com. If you're not familiar with GunChannels, can't help you. Can't help you at all. You guys have been around long enough to know that we're over on GunChannels. But if you are new and you seriously don't know, I'll put a link out there to chat. Come visit us at GunChannels.com. It's a great 2A pro gun platform started by G-Webs almost 6 years, going on 6 years now. And it's a great place where to talk guns, talk anything, the gun community. Hell, if you just want to sit around in a lobby chat and talk pizza or whatever, there's always some really good food chats as well. But it's a great place to get together with like-minded people. So come check us out over on GunChannels.com. And speaking of Gun Channels, let's go say hello to everybody over there. Looks like you got Gizzard Gary's over there, a gun snob. On YouTube, we're going to do a quick roll call here and say hey to everybody. If we miss you, we're apologizing, but this gives us a couple minutes to get the notifications out for YouTube. So we'll go through the roll call and see what happens. I think Midnight Range TM was out there. Gun loving Grandpa Stanley, what's up, Buck? Shot with Buck again on Sunday, and he brought his better half, and we had a great time on Sunday, so it was good seeing my friend. Pete's out there. What's up, Guitar Man Pete? Local 223. Calaveras, the Tactical Pickles out there. D-Temp 62. What's up, D-Temp? You don't know me. Well, maybe I don't know you, but okay. He said he's from Dallas. So he's just booked his room for Tulsa in April. So he's going to be there. So awesome. We'll see you there in about a month, less than a month, actually. But you don't know me. He's out there. Let's see here. Who else is out there? Budget Guns and Gears, working a couple different duties out there. Gizzard Gary, Rich White, the 1%. Jen Davis says, evening all. Hello, Jen. How are you? Texas Blades. What's going on, Texas Blades? Stealth Hunters out there. Snobs out there. Lance is out there. Off the X. Go check him out. It's a buddy from home. Missed you on Sunday. He was having some quality family time down in a little town about 2 hours south. Hope you had a good time. We miss you. Had a good time, though. Let's see here. Mad Sexy's out there. Sandy's out there. What's up, Sandhill? Shooter. And you've got Ferrets with Guns. Yo. He just says, yo. What's up, Ferret? Let's see here. The Gun Cleaners. What's up, Rod? How you doing, my man? Talked to Rod a few days ago, so it was good. What's up, David? Guys, I want to bring up David real quick. David and Stacy. If you guys haven't checked out my last Armed Citizen podcast, it was David, and he tells a remarkable story about a family member and the ordeals of someone who was just fine, had an accident, and became mentally unstable, and his ordeal with the guns and life in general. It's an awesome, awesome podcast. So if you want to go check that out. But David's out there. So M-W Tactical's out there. Night Strike says, yo. Georgia Rebels out there. So let's kind of get going here, and we're going to introduce the panel real quick. And from we're going to mix up a little bit. We've got from South Carolina, we got Magic Mike. What is up, Mike?
Not too much, man. Glad to be here, ready to get some conversation going, and let's have some fun.
Yeah, I think this could be an interesting conversation. I think people have different points of view on this and all that. So I think it'll be a good discussion.
I think it'll be a good discussion, and at the same time, it's just education is the most important part to make it a good conversation. That's
right. Unknown users out there, and the host of The Right of the People on Friday nights. If you haven't checked it out, it's a great, great live show podcast. It's one of my favorite out there. I try to jump on when I can on Friday nights, but I love it. We've got Budget Guns and Gear reviews. What's going on, Budget?
Hey, thanks a lot for the invitation, Ghost. I really appreciate it. Love this show. This seems like it's going to be a pretty good topic tonight. I think we're in for a good one.
It could be. And guys, if you haven't figured it out, is that not like one of the greatest voices? I mean, he's just got a great voice. Yeah, it's a great voice. Let's see here. Unknown users out there. I think I said that. Blue Steel 44 is out there. I'm trying to catch up as we go. But if I don't call yet, I apologize. It's not intentional. And from the great state of Texas, the man who had his own holiday this past Sunday, the tactical leprechaun himself. What's up, Clover? How you doing? How was your Sunday leprechaun day?
It was fairly eventless.
Eventless. Was that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It was all right. Got a little range time in with some newbies. So it was.
How'd that go for you?
It was okay. It was fun.
Yeah. Was it a newbie that had interest in guns or a newbie that was just along for the ride?
One of each.
Oh, even better. So how that one, if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer, but the one that was just along for the ride, did that person leave kind of feeling?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh,
good.
yeah.
Good. Awesome. That's what it's all about. If you can make it fun for someone, obviously make it safe. But that's the whole ordeal is can we change one mind at a time? We don't need to change the masses. One mind at a time. I love that. Congratulations, Clove. So we're going to talk about tonight is the boogeyman really coming for our guns? And there are a lot of different people that have different outlooks on this. So whether or not the government or the anti-gunners are truly coming for our guns, or is this just a big, power play for show? And either way, we're going to discuss whether we believe it or not, and two, what can we do to maybe combat this, and what is out there? What do we see in the next year and a half? Because the next year and a half is going to get pretty interesting with the political rhetoric because of the 2020 elections. As you guys know, half of the Senate had an election this past November. The other half will have one in 2020. So that being said, and all congressmen are 2-year terms, so it's going to be everyone up for grabs again. It's going to be really interesting to see if we can decipher, are they truly coming for our guns, or are they just putting out the political lines to set up a campaign? So we're going to kind of go through the room and out there in the questions. If you have a question or a comment and you want us to address it in the chat, please tag myself or one of us in the chat, or you can email it to live@ghosttactical.us, or you can text it to 530-364-4678, and we will try to get those questions. If we don't get them answered online, I will try to email you and give you the answer, at least my opinion of the answer would be. So let's kind of run through the room real quick before we get going, and we'll start with Clover and ask you to start the conversation out. Do you think the boogeyman is really coming?
No.
Okay.
Is the whole
rhetoric or what?
Yeah, I mean the whole idea of the boogeyman. The thing is, the boogeyman's been around for 100 years. We're not hearing anything that we haven't heard for 100 years, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. It doesn't matter if we're talking gun control or we're talking global warming or whatever. You pick a topic, right? And there's been demonization happening on both sides, for 100 years. It's no different. It doesn't mean we don't have to be vigilant. It doesn't mean that we don't have to pay attention. It doesn't mean that we don't have to do our duty as citizens and as a voting bloc and all these other things. But to get beside ourselves and scared and riled up and what's worse, to perpetuate those stereotypes onto other people, I just don't see a need for that.
Yeah. This is something that's new. Obviously, this has been going on for a long time. And I'm going to start bringing up David out there says that he literally just got a spam call from one of the Colorado Congress members for a town meeting. He said they are listening. So there you go. We're talking about politics and he gets a political phone call. So Spynet is working at its fullest right now. Mad Sexy says the boogeyman is real. He stole his tacos. There you go. Now, he put up something out there. It says red flag laws will pass and be used to disarm people who aren't dangerous to anyone. We're going to bring up red flag laws here in a bit. Mike, what about you right off the bat? I'm going to say I'm going to call budget. So if I say Mike, it means Michael Woodland. But Mike, right now, if you had to sit there and say, is the boogeyman coming, or is this all smoke and mirrors, or is it a combination of both?
They're coming. The smoke screen is the big words they're using, but they're going to use it in the form of laws depending on where you live. And when they do that, it's going to get ugly because it's going to set the precedence. And it might not happen next week, next month, but within the next few years, 10 to 15 years, it's coming.
Yeah. Stealth Hunter says the foundation is being laid for later Democrat control of the House, Senate, and White House. I mean, and I'm not saying that this is going to be anything that's different than any other election year. Each party has an agenda, and they have 5, 6, 7 different things that are on the national agenda from the committee, or our RNC, the DNC are setting out the agenda for the party, and they're obviously trying to set up that agenda to where if they do have the triple threat control, Congress, Senate, White House, then obviously it's a lot easier. So they're always going to be going through the rhetoric and the checklist of agenda. Obviously that agenda can change, but there's always 3 or 4 things that never change. They just maybe sometimes rotate a couple smaller agendas that may be time sensitive or whatever. But yeah, the smoke signals, the big words, and all of that, it's all interesting to kind of get an idea of what they're thinking. And I think sometimes with politicians is they write a lot of different stuff with these big words, hoping that people don't know what they mean. And for the most part, people that don't know what they mean aren't going to go look it up. They just sit there and say, well, they must be smart. So they know they're using these big words. So we'll just trust them that they're right. So I think a lot of times the language that is used, and we'll actually, there's interesting ways that that people think of the Second Amendment as well, as how punctuation is used. And a comma somewhere else might make that statement completely different meaning depending on how they use punctuation. So it's interesting how the political rhetoric starts. Budget, what about you? Boogeyman coming or not?
Boogeyman most assuredly is, was, and always will be coming. They've been doing it for 100 years. They have been killing us, but with the death of 1,000 cuts over time, and it's always been their strategy to incrementally, a little bit at a time, take and take and take and take. Look at the history of gun control in this country. Starting with the back in the 20s and 30s and ending up until now. They'll take a little bit, then they'll take a little bit more, then something will happen, and they'll take a little bit more, then something will happen, and they'll take a little bit more. We may get a little bit of pushback, but they continue to go on and on and on and on. Right now, they feel emboldened. And yes, they are trying to lay a groundwork right now. Since they own the House, they're trying to lay the groundwork to set up the battles to take the Senate. And of course, they really lust to have the House, the Senate, and the White House. And if they get all 3 of those, if you don't think they would try to ram through some sort of egregious gun control bill to strip even more of our rights as quickly as they can, while they can, you're crazy. The left has always struck while the iron is hot, and they're not afraid to do it.
Yeah. Casino Boss, I want to run this through because I think this is an interesting statement. He said, the laws are designed to discourage us from exercising our Second Amendment. It is a control issue. They will use the laws to trump us, charge us that you may not be found guilty, but will bankrupt you personally. And I think there's some merits of that, because I think that it's a backdoor gun control. As if they can come up with some charges, and these were the red flag laws come into play, is if you are going through the red flag process, no matter where you are, that they're obviously going to have to find a way to go through due process, or the Supreme Court would shut it down. But if they've got a way to get due process, what that means is more time in court, spending time in front of doctors and psychiatrists, and trying to be not only deemed mentally incapable of owning firearms, but then getting them back. You're talking about more lawyers, more doctors, more times in front of a judge, and it's going to be a tedious thing. And maybe that's something, and I'll get you guys' views on this. Anyone can jump in, but Clover, Mike, or Budget. But is this a way to maybe get people to where they don't want to own guns, because if they had to go through all these processes, they'd say it's just not worth it anymore for the casual gun owner. Is that something they're trying to do?
Absolutely.
I don't think so. Disagree.
Okay,
I agree wholeheartedly that's exactly what they're doing.
All right. Well, okay. So
but it's not the end all be all of their strategy, but it's part of it.
Okay. Clover, do you want to rebut that?
Well, it's not that I don't, I can't read their minds. I mean, I can look at the writing on the wall. I can look at their history, and I can say, okay, their motive behind this legislation or whatever it might be is X, Y, and Z. Okay. Certainly seems anti-gun. Okay. I will concede that much. But to sit there and say that red flag laws, we're going to pass red flag laws, and then the next thing you know, we're going to wake up and there's going to be 100+ million gun owners that all of a sudden are having to show up to court because somebody in their family or work colleague or whatever has reported them, and there's sufficient findings, and it ties up the court system and the judges and the local law enforcement, and look at all of the entities and the people involved in this, and say that that's a ploy. I got to play devil's advocate on this one and say that okay, the bills, some states, the bills are written horribly. I get that. I mean, that needs to be fought. Other states, I don't think are written that bad. I think that there is process in there. I think that there is oversight in there. I think there is the ability to, for anybody that is accusing you of anything to show sufficient evidence, and, so forth and so on all the way down the line. So I don't see it as a play of a gun confiscation play with nationwide gun confiscation play. I just don't. Logistically, it doesn't play out. And that may be what's in their mind, and they're too stupid to realize that logistically it's not going to work. But either way.
Yeah, and I think that we've had discussions on multiple chats, and we've on Budget's chat, and all of them is, it's not necessarily the fact that the laws are bad, but I don't think they truly have it figured out. I don't think they care, but how they're going to go about enacting a national or even a state level confiscation of guns. The law enforcement, they're not going to want to go into a house where they know that they've had a chance of being shot, because they're going to go confiscate guns. On the national level, you're talking about militarizing the National Guard. Probably, if you're going at a national level, if you're going to militarize the National Guard, is that not an act of war on the people? I think it probably could be. So I don't think that either they're not thinking it through, or they're too dumb, or they just don't care. But actually going through with the plan of a gun confiscation is just not going to work. It could get really, really nasty. I'm not saying civil war. What I am saying is, if someone comes on my front lawn with a loaded weapon, they're not going to get to the door. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm out there looking to hurt someone, but you stepping on my property with a loaded weapon in an aggressive manner, I have every right, covered by my constitutional right, to defend myself and my property. So in essence, the confiscation is an act of war on my personal safety. So that's just my take. I do agree. I don't think that people think it that far down the road. Mike, did you have anything you want to bring up on the confiscation or anything?
Yes. I believe it's coming, but I think it's going to hit the next 2 generations the hardest, because conspiracy theory thought right here. The skinny jean generation is not like our generation, because we will actually fight for what we believe in. The skinny jean generation, they're more going to be a little bit more passive, because they don't understand what the struggle was, because we lived it coming off of what our parents went through. So if anything, it's going to hit more 2 generations from now before it actually hits our generation. But the foundation is actually being set right now.
Yeah. Budget.
I want to dovetail in with what Mike just said. You know, I don't believe, let me clarify my position on this. I don't believe that red flag laws and or confiscation, etc., is the goal in and of themselves. I don't think that they're enacting these laws with an eye towards actually enforcing them. I don't think that they're enacting these laws with the idea that they're actually going to do anything. I mean, in isolated instances, yes, sure, it'll happen. But I think, you know, they're not enacting them with the ideal of nationwide. We're going to go door to door, kicking locks out, and you know, going in and taking your guns. What they are doing is they're just adding another pebble. You know, they're putting you know, we're all carrying this wheelbarrow, and they're chucking another pebble into it, and then they're chucking yet another pebble into it, and then they're chucking yet another pebble into it. They know that in and of themselves, these pebbles are meaningless. They're nothing. We can just shrug it off and shoulder that load and go on about our business. But after a while, those pebbles add up and they get too heavy for us to bear. And that's the entire strategy that they've been taking for the last 100 years. And it's working because we sit back and rightly tell ourselves, oh, this law isn't going to do anything. Oh, that law isn't going to do anything. You know, it was, I believe it was the Attorney General in Colorado, or it was some Colorado politician, when talking about a gun control law that they're trying to enact there, that said that, you know, this law wasn't meant to do anything. It was meant to foster a culture of compliance. That's what they're doing. They're changing the culture a bit by bit by bit, pebble by pebble by pebble, until we're crushed.
Yep. Lockjaw up there earlier says, if you think now is the time to be complacent, speaking on your terms, you are mistaken. We have to go from defensive to offensive. And we've been saying, at least I have, and I think most of us have been saying that for quite some time. GU has been saying this for a long, long time, is why are we always just trying to fight the latest bill or the latest attack? Why don't we flip the script and just go after repealing the NFA and really just sit there and saying, hey, you want to play these games? We can play them too. And I'm going to bring G in real quick. He kind of just joined a little bit late, but you know, G, why, in your opinion, why do you think that the gun side, the pro gun side, isn't ready or ever willing to really go on the absolute offensive here?
I don't think we're thirsty enough for it. We haven't got enough people that are, you know, found an interest in the stuff that's restricted or prohibited to want to fight back.
Yeah, and I guess that's really what it comes down to is it worth the effort for people? And there are people that go on a daily, you know, they try to do their part and all that, but you're talking 30 million some odd gun owners in America, and you're telling me we can't get a million of those people to be active on a consistent basis? That's, you know, that's a large amount of people, but it's not really that much. I mean, as far as the grand scheme of gun owners, but we don't have that group that's willing to say, hey, let's really contact our congressman. But instead of saying, hey, vote no on this bill, why don't we bring up something? And here's a great thing. Why can't you write your own bill? I've actually written a couple bills in the last 6 months and sent them on to my state level congressman. And they're probably not very well written or whatever, but it's at least an attempt. But we have the right to write bills as well. We can submit them to our representatives or senators and say, hey, take this, please, you know, consider it for something. And you never know what's going to happen. But if enough people will start sending in bills or the thought to their representatives to say, hey, screw this, let's actually go and after, we've got numbers right now, let's go ahead and try to repeal this. And maybe we could have done that in the first 2 years of Trump's office, but nothing was really done. And I get that people are going to say that Trump may not be the most pro two-way. But when it comes down to it, he says he's not a politician, but he's got an election in 2020. And if he wants to run again, I don't think he gets elected without the gun community. So it's an interesting concept. So there was another one I want to bring up that Casino said storage requirements and safe requirements, so on and so forth. They are pricing the two-way out of the common person's ability to afford. Now that right there is a valid point, but I'm not so sure that it's the anti-gunners that are doing it. I just think that that's the way that the market dictates, and free market and all of that dictates that supply and demand and cost of materials and all of that. But what I will say is some of the bills that they're putting out there are going to be discouraging as far as time and effort on how to get a gun, whether it's a waiting period or a background check or whatever. It is going to be maybe a discouraging thing for people to sit there and say the process of getting into guns might be not worth it. But yeah, I think there's a valid thing is maybe the gun companies also need to understand that prices these days are not always the greatest, and depending on the time of year and the temperature of the community and all of that. But prices do hurt, and people that are trying to get into the gun life may not be able to afford it. So what do you guys think about pricing ourselves out of gaining more people? Is that valid or not? And I'll start with Clover. Uh-oh, we might have lost Clover.
Yeah, I'm still here. I was out in the chat.
Oh, my bad. No, I mean, is it valid to think that maybe the pricing, or at least the policies of how to get a gun with possibly
that's been something that's been an issue in the past, right? And it hasn't really it's worked. You know, I mean, what can you say? Unfortunately, it has worked. I mean, I think that's a big deal. I mean, that's why we see the Yankees Pistol Project or whatever and all this other stuff. I mean, there's obviously people out there that for whatever reason in their mind would love a handgun for the home, shotgun for the home, whatever it might be, and feel that they can't afford it. Now, my personal thoughts on this, even though I will concede that tactic by anti-gunners has worked in the past and probably will continue to work. I mean, especially if and I'll get on to how I think we fix that. And it's not actually a pro-gun, anti-gun issue, but the, dang, I lost my train of thought there.
I have that effect on people,
Yeah, I know. What were we talking about? We were talking
about pricing people out.
We were talking about pricing people out. So my personal reflection on that is that, if you can't afford $150 for a high point, $100 for a, used pump shotgun or something like that, you can't squirrel that away. I get that if there's an immediate need, right? If you feel an immediate threat, I get it. But, if you can't squirrel away over 6 months, or especially income tax time, because even people that enter in very low income tax bracket or very low income brackets get income tax returns and things like that. I mean, maybe you don't buy 15 Blu-rays, out of the Walmart bin. Maybe you buy a shotgun, instead. So maybe you don't go out to eat. Maybe you buy some beanie weenies or some pork and beans or something to eat, one night a week for 6 months and squirrel some money away, or whatever. So I think there's a certain amount of personal responsibility when it comes to the financial ability to purchase a firearm, go through whatever the means may be. That being said, again, I do concede that the government for the longest has tried to make it increasingly pricey for that. And then I had another point that I was going to make with that, but I'll have to come back because I don't know, I lost my train of thought on that one for some reason.
Well, to go along with that, Budget, you were saying something in the inner chat. You want to bring that up?
Oh, I remember now, by the way.
Part of the way that we need to stop the whole pricing ourselves out of existence by discouraging new people from buying guns is we as a community need to stop the damn gun snobbery. We need to stop shaming people for buying things like High Point and Taurus, things that may not be the best guns in the world. They may have a rougher finish, may not be, the super duper awesome competition guns, but that everybody can afford, that can do the job and could save their lives and could get them interested in the shooting sports. We have to stop that. People who buy the Hatfield shotgun, who buy the High Point pistols and buy the High Point carbines and the Taurus pistols and all that, there's nothing wrong with it. If that's what you can afford, buy it. Save up later, trade it in later, after, a year or two after you save something up. Maybe somebody doesn't want to spend a whole lot, $500 on a pistol the first time they buy one. They don't know whether they're going to like it or not, and they just want to spend $150 for something to plink around with. More power to them.
Absolutely. As long as they're involved, I don't care what you shoot. We can sit there and talk, and we joke all the time about Glocks and CZs and SIGs, and we joke back and forth to all these people, the high points and the Skies and the Jimenez, and some of these guns may be dangerous, so we might not want you to get those. But as far as the low cost guns, we joke about it, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think I speak for most. I would much rather you go buy a high point than to not buy a gun and defend yourself at all. I'd rather you go buy Hena Jimenez or a used high point for $99. Mm-hmm. At least have something. So at least you're there and you're able to protect your loved ones and your property and all that. So as much as we joke around and we jest and all of that, it comes down to I'd rather you have something than nothing. Now, Clover, you said you had something else you wanted to bring up.
Yeah, to go along, we were talking about the pricing out, and this goes in such a, it applies to such a larger swath of what we talk about, and would probably change a lot of things that we see in this country, from issues related to the Second Amendment to violence to everything all the way down the line, is economic issues. And we talk about how you said earlier, well, the Trump needs the gun people to win. Well, it depends on how he plays on the economy people, because and so if we can find ways to I hate to use the word enrich, but enrich the poor, enrich the middle class, and that sort of stuff, then I think that does a couple of things. First of all, it takes one more political issue off the plate, right? Because they're not having to worry about which politicians do I need to vote for, so that they're not killing me on taxes or this, that, or the other. And then also it removes that, so it bumps up that Second Amendment relevancy in elections, I think, because just by default from removing an aspect or a topic. And then also it provides the means by which they can afford to exercise said Second Amendment. But so often we talk about 2A from a stance of fighting gun legislation, proposing gun legislation, outreach and all this other stuff. And so I got to think in my mind, what if we were to shift gears and tackle some of these social and economic issues as the gun community as well?
Yep. Just to piggyback on that for a second, good friend of ours, Mike Sedini with Walk the Talk America, is trying to do just that. Is the biggest thing that we try to as a community go to when they start throwing these crazy stats is we'll say 2/3 are suicide, 2/3 are suicide, 2/3 are suicide. And it's true. But wouldn't it be nice if the suicide rate was cut in half as well? And so outreach programs like Walk the Talk America, trying to get out ahead of the mental illness side within our own community. And instead of us trying to use it as an excuse or a punchline, embrace it and say, look, we have people within our community that can get disturbed at times, and we need to help them to where we get them help before they become a statistic. And I think that there are a lot of people out there, Mental Health America's out there, that you did a podcast with. Clover was a great podcast. And Walk the Talk America, there's a lot of people out there that are trying to get the mental health issues in the 2A community at least addressed and brought out to light. I want to bring Mike and G in, and actually anybody, but I want to go with Mike first and G on this one. I think this is a great concept question to think about. Mad Sexy out there says, plot twist: if the red flag does pass, do you think there could be some good from it? I want to start with Mike here real quick.
Honestly, I could say no, but it's going to be masked in the language, because bottom line is when you sit there and you look at it, there are people who are trying to take our rights and make them a privilege. You know, so when you look at it from that concept, does the wheel start turning? Right? Because before you know it, now, like you said beforehand, is how they're going to start taxing us in order to buy a firearm. It's mandatory that you got to take so many hours of training. It's mandatory that you must have a certain size safe at your house. You know, so it's going to come, but when it comes, it's going to be in small print this year and then small print again next year. And then before you know it, 7 years from now, when you add it all up, it's going to be out of the price range for the average person.
G, red flag laws, do you think they could do some good if they are passed somehow, some way, or, you know, answering Mad Sexy's question?
I guess it depends on what scope, right? So if it's a state level, it's different than if it's a national. Is there a national one up right now?
Not that I know of. Not that's the true red flag. No. I think
so. Rubio introduced one.
Who?
What's that?
Marco Rubio introduced one, didn't he? And I think
that didn't even got a committee. That never even got out of committee, I don't think.
Okay.
So theoretically, if we're talking national, then you're going to get the weight of everybody who is against it for the gun side, and then potentially, you know, whatever political awareness is against it for the due process side, right? But if it's a state level, it's going to be frustrating because we see what happens at state level. We tend to allow states to fall without much consequence. I mean, it's, you know, it's an opportunity. I mean, you can always look at anything as a total loss, but anything that happens in front of everybody is always an opportunity for us to reach out. And, you know, at some point we're going to realize that 49 states have influence on the 50th state. It doesn't matter what the 50th state is. People either have business in that state, they vacation there, they have family there, they have other interests there. So, you know, once we figure out that we can wield our influence in states that are not ours through various ways, then, you know, it's an opportunity for that, I guess, if it happens at a state level or if it continues to happen at state levels. I'm just looking for a silver lining, but
Sandhill Shooter says that Lindsey Graham brought one out in the Senate, and it's going to go in front of the House, the Senate Judiciary.
That's what I thought.
Can I throw one out from what Clover was saying before, though?
Absolutely, yeah.
So, I don't remember what Clover was saying because we've said stuff since then, but made me think that there's definitely value in looking at our industry from other perspectives. And I think he was talking about money or something. And for example, if someone were to take on a project to investigate how much of the economy is the firearms industry, that's going to be interesting because I don't know if I've seen that laid out before, and other than, you know, occasionally in like a pie chart of everything. But if someone were to focus on how big a factor of our economy it is, that would talk about how many jobs we're talking about when they casually dismiss all gun owners as XYZ. You know, they'd actually have to start talking about this many jobs are going to be sacrificed. But then as politicians, they don't like to hear that. But then I think there's also this misconception that the gun industry is somehow large. I mean, it's not small, but when you look at any factor, any level of government, and you look at where they get their political funding from, the gun industry is tiny, and they use the ignorance of that to their advantage because they suggest that the gun industry is influential, and the gun industry barely pays for some campaign stops, I suspect, on most politicians' elections. So if someone were to actually put some effort into showing how big the industry is, which is significant, and then how little influence it has on government, I think all that information being out there and readily available and shared would give us all ammunition, pun intended, to use when talking to people about this. And again, they're going to go on this assumption that the gun industry is somehow doing all this when we all know it's us.
No, and that's a great point, because we've talked about this in the grand scheme of things. The two-way community, the gun community, is very, very small as far as influence goes. Like you said, it is a massive industry. It's a billion-dollar industry, multi-billion-dollar industry. And I think you're right. I think that if the general public, because we're kind of in an echo chamber here, we all are passionate about our Second Amendment rights. So in our lives, it's a big deal. But in the grand scheme of things of the political world, it's a small little compartment over here because there isn't a whole lot of influence outside of the NRA. But what if you start talking about, we talk about this all the time with writing your congressmen, writing your senators, and all of that. What if you guys at your hometowns did a fundraiser event and arrange for a candidate, a congressman candidate, and say, we'd like to invite you out here. If we think you're pro A, we can raise some money towards your campaign, not just write an email or a letter, actually get active involved into a campaign where if you have someone who's going to be doing the town hall meetings and all that, have your town hall at a range and see if that person is willing to come out and shoot a gun. They can say they're pro gun all they want. Let's just see if they come to the range, they shoot a gun, and are happy to be there. Then we'll cut you a check from our club or from our association. And you start talking about money, then you have direct influence over those candidates, because one, you're going to expose them if they're not really 2A or they're not really gun people. They might say they're 2A, but they've never been on a gun. Invite them to a range. Bring everybody that you know to that range and say, hey, if this guy shows up and he does some good, everyone put in $20. If you get 100 people out there, that's a significant contribution. That's a couple $1,000 contribution to a candidate. So I think that there are ways to be more proactive with our representatives at the state, local, federal level. Why not bring them to a range or bring them to an event and see really how pro-gun they really are? So that's something that I would like to maybe see happen. And that's something I plan on doing at my range is next year, try to bring in some state representative candidates and some federal, maybe congressmen and all that, and really see how serious they are about the 2A. See if they come to a range and have a town hall meeting at the range. So that'd be interesting to see. Bringing up another question out here, a comment that was a good one. We had it earlier from Texas Blades. And he said he'll bet a week's pay that the next big push will be ammo restrictions. They will say that ammo is not included as arms under the 2A and can be restricted or disallowed altogether. Thoughts on that? Anybody on the panel want to bring up and talk about the restriction of ammo now? Or the registration of ammo, which I think could be interesting. It's already happened in other states. And
yeah, didn't that start in California already? Whereas they have it where it's like you have to send, like if you order ammo, it has to go to a FFL or something like that.
There are a lot of states that have restrictions on ammo, but I'm talking about the registration of ammo, actually letting everyone know how much ammo you're buying and only buying it from FFLs or whatever you're talking where there is registration. Is that not gun control? Because if you can't afford the ammo, then why are you going to buy the gun? Yeah. Budget, Clover, anyone want to tackle that one, or we want to move on?
I just think that, with that, they're going to have to be really careful because with what you said about not classifying it as arms, I can see major loophole issues that could actually be a benefit to us at that point. So you're not really seeing that. They're if anything, they're doubling down the classification and putting it in the same, in the same genre or whatever, in the same category as arms. So from a Second Amendment standpoint, yes, there are infringements, but I don't see them moving away and saying that it's not arms, because that could open up importation, exportation issues. And we may not be able to get U.S. manufactured ammunition, but order it direct from another country or something at that point. And they've opened a can of worms there. So that's a whole complex issue. But with the whole, they're doing it in other states already where they're pushing, taxes and other things. At the end of the day, is that going to, and by the way, a lot of people say, well, reload. Most of the states that are pushing that, well, most of the states that are pushing that, as far as you got to realize your primers and your powders are hazmat already. So there's already federal oversight and stuff with that. So powders and primers could very easily end up being taxed as well. So even reloaders You're going to, of course, reload. You're going to save a little bit of money, but so it may offset that tax a little bit. But even reloaders are not safe. So if you're out there, you reload, you think this don't affect me, you may want to think again, because it certainly can.
Eventually, they'll get around to closing the reloader loophole. Don't worry.
Yeah, the reloader loophole. I like that. Yeah.
Mad Sexy says that starting July 1st in California, you have to pay $1 for an ammo background check. But if you fail, then you have to contact the DOJ and pay another bunch of fees. That's crazy. I hadn't heard that one, but $1 for an ammo background check. It's just another tax is what it is. It's just a tax. That's all that is. That's crazy to me. Now, do you have to pay $1 every time you buy ammo, or just want the first time? And maybe Mad Sexy can answer that out there. Does anybody else have anything you want to bring up about that? The ammo deal? Because if not, I want to bring up some stats that Artisan Tony put out there. And he said that the economic impact of firearms and ammunition industry in the United States increased from $19.1 billion in 2008 to $51.4 billion in 2017, 169% increase. And that just goes right there. What G was saying earlier is it's a $50 billion industry. There's enough money within this industry to make a big splash on a national level election. But either we need to do it as private citizens and consumers, or do we need the companies to do it, or the organization? I think all of us have to. Yes, we're going to give our money to the organizations. Yes, we're going to continue to buy firearms. And yes, we need to donate to congressmen or senators that we believe have our best interest. But so do these organizations, so these companies. And I know they do, but as a collective group, maybe we can do more. When you're talking about a $50 billion industry, how, and I want to bring G in it because he's the one who brought this originally up. A $50 billion industry. How are we not making an economic impact and influence on elections?
So if I can unmute, because I'm looking right now, that's what I was curious to see. 50 billion, right?
Yeah.
So
a lot of money.
Wait, 50 billion or million?
It's got to be billion.
Billion.
Yeah, got to be.
Oh, what am I looking at? Well, anyway, I'm trying to find something that shows us what the size of industries are in the United States.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So Dow Chemical alone is 50 billion. I don't know. I'm trying to find one that has industries and not individual companies. Here we go. The most profitable industries.
We're talking, those are massive, massive industries, you know.
So just this one isn't by number, but just by rank of most profitable. So how come, gun at 50 billion? It sounds like a lot of money. So the largest is health, then finance, then technology services, then electric, consumer non-durables, transportation, consumer services, utilities, producer manufacturing, communications, process industries, commercial services, commercial durables, industrial services, health services, retail trade, energy minerals, distribution services, and non-energy minerals are the most profitable industries in the United States. Where does guns fit into that? I mean, I'd like to find a graphic somewhere that shows me what the top 10 industries are as far as their money, because that's what I'm saying is I don't think we are saying the same thing. I think that although it's a big industry, it's not a big industry in this country. We have much larger industries that have the real pressure on the politicians.
Right. The profitability, and
this is the scapegoat. This is the one that they can push at because they can exploit victims, and they know that we're a consistent player in their stupid chess game. They know that we're going to react in a certain way, so they anticipate fighting us with no consequences.
And I think it's no secret. I mean, everybody, we're speaking to the echo chamber, and for those out there that are maybe listening, they're outside the echo chamber. Yeah, I mean, I could certainly go find some data real quick and back it up. It's not hard to do, but from the manufacturers all the way down through the distributors to to even your local gun shops, your local dealer, it's no secret that the margins, the profit in the firearm industry is extremely low, especially when you compare it to other industries.
Tony out there says NSSF is where he got his stuff, so maybe there's more over on NSSF.
Thanks.
Yep. Vanessa Kitty out there says you must get an ammo permit here if you don't have the state's handgun or long gun permit. And Mad Sexy did send me a text and he said it's every time you buy ammo starting July 1st in California. It's a $1 background check. All that is a tax. That's all it is. It's all it is a tax. Let's see here.
You're also only allowed to buy 1 box of ammo a day now.
What's that now?
Just saying. Then they up next they'll put up a law that says you can only buy 1 box of ammo.
Oh, I thought you said that was a law. I was like, holy hell, I hadn't heard that one before.
That'll be the 1-2 punch.
Then they'll find another pebble to throw on the pile.
Right. You know, and a lot of it comes down to, like you said, there's a lot of stuff that's going to be happening in the next year and a half with political punchlines. They're going to throw the sexy topics out there. We've had this discussion before, and I brought this up many times, but you know, whatever your beliefs and likes or dislike of Trump are, he has changed the political landscape in the last 2 years. He is a moderate at best. Let's be honest. He's a moderate at best. He's not a conservative. He's a moderate Republican. But what he has done is he has brought, in one fell swoop, brought the Republican and the conservative side to the middle. And in order to beat him, you have to be different from him, correct? So what that has forced the liberals, the Democrats of the country, it's forced them so far to the radical left just to get away from him that it's forced them to do things that they're not comfortable with. There was a statement earlier in the chat that someone said they're going to have to wait to 2024 because the Democrats don't have a viable presidential candidate. I think there are some people out there that are going to be put in the spotlight pretty quickly, that as far as public appearance and all of that, there are some viable candidates. The question is their politics going to stand up to what Trump has done? Because whether you like him or not, Trump has done a lot of what he said he was going to do. Now, I just wish he would stay off of Twitter a little bit and not make some comments that he has made. But whether you like him or not, I think he has done a lot of what he said that he was going to do. That being said, in the next 18 months, with the elections coming in next November, you're going to start seeing a lot of political rhetoric being talked about, a lot of different topics and issues. And a lot of it is because they understand that they're trying to rally their base. Like I said, the DNC and the RNC, they have their agendas, and the people that are yellow dog Democrats and the ones that are, you know, the crazy Republicans, they're going to follow those platforms down the line. So they know that Social Security, abortion, healthcare, firearms, all of these are staples in each side's, which side you come on. You're going to see a lot of things happen out there. You're going to see a lot of bills right now in the House being put out there that are anti-gun. Why? They understand that most of these aren't going to happen, if any of them. But what they're doing is getting their name on record, putting up a bill or sponsoring a bill so they can go back and campaign that they're trying. They co-sponsored this bill. They did this. They did this. They co-sponsored 17 gun control bills while they were in Congress. So a lot of it is literal smoke and mirrors, that they're just trying to get their names on a bunch of bills and produce all these bills to where they can go and campaign on it. That being said, the scary thing is a couple of these might actually have some legs, and we have to be very, very careful. Let me go and check in here real quick. Oregon gun bill has already proposed a 20 rounds per month limit. Budget, you want to talk about that? I hadn't heard about that. 20 rounds per month. They even sell 20 round boxes outside of Hollow Point anymore?
That's what they're talking about out in the chat, that in Oregon, they have already proposed that, you know, how G was saying, yeah, next you only be able to buy 1 box a month. Well, hey, guess what? They're trying that in Oregon. They're already floating that balloon.
Yeah, that's just crazy. That's
if you think about it, there's 30 days in a month, and there's only 20 rounds in that box of ammo, so there's no way you could kill everybody every day.
You'd have to like save all year.
They're saying that budget GunStreamer says also no magazines over 5 rounds. Yeah, you're going to start seeing some crazy stuff. You're going to start seeing some crazy stuff because what's going to happen is they're going to go for the very far extreme in hopes that they come back and negotiate in committee, and they might say 20 rounds per month, but it might end up being 50 rounds per month is a compromise. But that's still 50 rounds a month is just absolute madness. So just be careful out there and understand that there's going to be a lot of stuff thrown out there. I'm not saying don't be worried. I'm definitely not saying don't be proactive. I'm saying understand what's going to happen right now. The Dems have the House, and they're going to make as much ripples in the pond as they can and hope that those ripples spread all the way to the shore and try to gain some legs. But more importantly, a lot of it is going to be political rhetoric that they're trying to get their names on a document that they can go home and campaign on. Let's make no mistake about it. A politician's job is to get reelected, and anyone that thinks otherwise is crazy. They're not there to govern. They're not there to make changes. They might show up their first term thinking that they're going to do some good and they're going to make changes in this country. And then they find out very, very quickly the only way to gain power is to go along party lines, whether you believe it or not. Don't rock the boat until you've got some experience and you get on the right committees. Well, the way you're going to get on the right committees is by, unfortunately, I would say being corrupt might be strong, but I want to say being shady for sure. And that's how government works. And people say it all the time. You don't really want to know how two things are made, hot dogs and laws. And that's just the way it is. Politics is nasty. Politics is a business, and politics is all about the next election. So out there, go ahead.
I have to give an alternative to that because I don't see it that way. I see it that we have a framework that's lasted through a civil war. We have a framework that's brought the state of the world's consciousness from the way people are thought of to the way we are today. And now we have people that don't like the idea of individuals having power. They worship state, and they've pushed influence on multiple ways in a free place, right? They figured out a long time ago that you don't fight free individuals, you make them fight themselves. So we've had influence. The system, though, is super strong. And we can look at the system and say, I'm frustrated and the people that are in there are corrupt and it's a horrible system. Or we can watch the veterans that are coming out and getting rising and becoming elected, and we can be active in our local and watch those people, get more, whatever, rise in, level of elected position or whatever, and you can be part of it. But to suggest that you can be an observer and also complain about it's two different things, right? We have to be part of it, and there are people that are good politicians that are going in there. The system works. So I say this is the kind of year when we want to put as much attention as possible to promoting the good that's in there, because suggesting let's all tear it down because scoundrels figured out how to abuse it.
I'm not saying tear it down. I'm just saying be skeptical. The system is there for a reason. The system works. Now, someone brought up the idea that, and this is true, that they're out there trying to change the electoral college and abolish the electoral college, because if you can abolish the electoral college, then you have basically Florida, New York, Texas, and California, 4 states. That's all any politician would ever be in, because those 4 states would win the election. Throw in Pennsylvania and Ohio, we'll call it 6 states. Election's over. And there's a reason why there's electoral college, so that everyone has a say. But there is a strong movement, and it has been for a long time, to get rid of the electoral college. And that's just talking about right there, like you said, the system is here and it has lasted and it has survived for a reason. And I'm not going to argue that at all. It is a strong system. Unfortunately, I think the inhabitants of the positions of power, regardless of of whether they're Republican or Democrat, they're all influenced by power and money and control. And when you get in those positions, very few, I'm not going to say all, because there are some patriots out there, but I would say that very few govern while they're there. They try to do something. Most of the time it's there not to get in the way, not to upset the party leaders. It's going to be fall in your place. And they'll tell you straight up, as a junior congressman, your job is to keep your mouth shut and vote down party, do what we tell you to do. And unfortunately, that's just, whether we want to believe that, it's the crappy way, but that's how politics works a lot of the time. Not all the time, but some of the time. Most of the time, probably. Let's see here. Let me come in here. Does anybody else want to say? Now we're gonna get ready.
I don't disagree with any of that. I'm just hopeful. I'm optimistic that as your Feinsteins and your Pelosi's and these like archaic dinosaurs fall away, that the people that replace them will be medium corrupt, and then with the transparency and the consequences that happen with the transparency that we have with media and conversations now. That hopefully there'll be less and less opportunity for those corrupt systems to have their hold, because as they lose people, how do you get another Pelosi or a Feinstein that's been corrupt for decades? Like these new pawns that people are putting up is, those are, look at the roots of these. These are literally people that signed up for casting calls and that, appealed to whatever parameters and were put up there. But they're put up there in numbers, just like the anti-gun stuff. They're put up there in such numbers. They're just throwing stuff up to see what sticks. When something sticks, they run with it. But that's different than a Pelosi who's got all that money and corruption. Those people aren't going to have the puppets they had or they have, in future years. So I think that we've got a potential for a better system coming up here in a minute.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
I think would be, hold on, Clover. I think it's something that I think would be interesting. I'll bring you in here, Clover, and let you answer it first, and you can go on. But what about term limits?
I don't know that we'll ever see that.
We'll have a turnover all the time in congressmen and senators to where you're not going to have 35-year congressmen or 40-year senators in there that are just feeding on themselves at that point. You give them a term limit of 10 years or 2 terms, or let's say in the Senate it'll be 2 terms is 12 years. So we'll give the Congress 12 years also. But after 12 years of service, you're done. And at that point, we're refreshing. Is that something that's viable?
I think it is, if it's gone about in a certain way. And I think that the way that it's been approached has been the wrong. People are putting the cart before the horse. I think in order to get term limits, I think you have to pare back on a lot of the perks, and everything for these politicians. And I think it plays into what G-Web said something there that I totally agree with, and it's brilliant. And I think as you pare these politicians back and you pare back the election funding, the fundraising aspect of elections, you pare back, that way normal everyday people can run if they want to, if they have the backing of their local party, their county party, their state party, whatever it might be. And I'm okay with abolishing parties altogether. But as we pare back some of those things, maybe pare back the benefits, pare back the security details, pare back the pay, then you can create a situation to where it's not as and pare back some of these instances where these people in Congress go on to, the presidency. Even let's step away from Congress. Let's go to the presidency. The presidency in this country it's a launching board. It really is. It used to be that was the pinnacle of success. You were the leader of the free freaking world, right? Where do you go from there? And nowadays that's not the case. It hasn't been that way for decades. You're the president. You're the leader of the free freaking world, and then you go on to make billions and billions of dollars after that with speeches, and look at the influence you have, and you fly all around the world, and you're still involved in politics. It's just on the sly and weird stuff like that. So I think that we have to deal with some components of politics first, and the term limits will come later. And then, what G-Web said, I completely agree, because the weirdos, I'm going to be nice, the weirdos that we see, especially from the far left now, they're coming out. They're these new quote unquote superstars, whatever you want to call them, of the left, and they come out and they're just wildly crazy from the jump. When you look at the Pelosi's and the Feinsteins and the Bidens, and you look at all these other people, the old school politicians, that their days are numbered. You know, that's just nature. Then they amassed power through deceit and trickery and a lot of other things, and then they went full tilt. Okay, it wasn't a situation where they came out of that gate doing that. So G-Web's absolutely right. The Cortez's or whatever crazy ass chick, whatever her name is, she'll never be able to amass the following, you know, that the Bernie Sanders or the Pelosi's or the Feinsteins or the whoever, the Schumers or whatever,
or the Favors, right?
Right. No, yeah, there's no way. She's just too volatile. She's been too volatile, and she hasn't amassed that power first like they did. And that's actually a light at the end of the tunnel. Yep. Because as those other ones do, as G-Web says, start to fall off, well, that's when, at the very least, you can get some more moderate, maybe, Democrats in play.
Yep. I think that there is a good chance of the moderates really kind of starting to come from both sides to see, you know, man, there's some crazy people, and Cortez is one of them. There's a lot of crazy people that have been elected to office, and I don't want to blame New York or anyone for voting this woman in, but there's some man, there's some crazy ones out there. Here's an interesting question before we start wrapping this up. Mad Sexy says, if you don't think Trump will run in 2020, who will you and the panel vote for? And my answer to that is I have no idea. If you would have asked me a year ago, I would have told you I don't think Trump's going to run. I do think Trump will run again. I think that he has gotten a little taste of a little bit of success and all of that, and he's an egomaniac at heart. So it's all about the power, and the most powerful man in the world is a pretty good kind of title. So I think he will run, but if he doesn't, it's my opinion is it's way too damn early. If you remember when Obama won in 2008, he wasn't even on the radar until about August of the election. Everyone just assumed it'd be Hillary and it'd be all this, that. Obama was, so we don't even know who the candidates were going to be, much less who the front runner is. As much as it makes my absolute blood boil to say this, if I went by the candidates that were there last in 2016, God, I hate to say this, but as much as I can't stand his personality, I think Cruz would be a good candidate again. I think that he is a true conservative. Whether or not you like his personality, whether or not you think he's an absolute douche or not, I think that I can't stand him to listen to him talk and all that. But his ideals and his morals, I think, are true conservatives. So I would say someone like a Ted Cruz, hopefully someone who has the morals and the ideals and the ethics of Ted Cruz, that's just maybe a little bit more likable. I don't know who that is. It's just interesting. So let's run through the room. What about you, Budget? If no Trump, do you have anyone that you would like to maybe see run?
I voted Cruz in the last primary.
There you go.
You know, I again, same view you had. His views and his avowed policies and the things that he said he stood for aligned more closely with my own than anyone else's.
Yeah. Mike, what about you? Anything? And like I said, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to talk politics, but is there anyone, whether you're a Trump fan or not, is there anyone that you're looking to run in 2020?
There are a few people who I would like to see run, but will they? Probably not. Because you know that whole structure is so corrupt. Remember last year, like, and I'm not saying I was looking at this guy running, but you remember last year when Bernie was running, they came out with that scandal that his wife was embezzling money or something like that. That knocked him out the race. You know, so if he tries to run again this year, will that come back up again to bite him? You see what I'm saying?
They're going to use what they can against anybody, you know.
Exactly. So. Yeah. So right now it's just that standpoint is look at the people who are running right now, start doing your research on the people that are coming out who say they're running. But then at the same time, look at the people who are running on your local level, right? Don't so much worry about the presidential election. Worry about more of your local level, because that's it's going to filter from the bottom up, right? Change doesn't start from the top working its way down. So you got to get active, and you got to do a lot of research. You got to do a lot of phone calls. You got to start talking to everybody in your community. So right now it's just that hurry up and wait syndrome like we had in the military.
Exactly. I want to bring Budget real quick. I know you've got to head out here, go to work. Do you want to go ahead and plug your stuff and tell people where they can find you before you head out?
Sure. I'm Mike with Budget Guns and Gear Reviews. You can find my stuff at www.budgetgunsandgear.com. You can also find me here on YouTube at Budget Guns and Gear Reviews. Also over on GunChannels. I do a show every Friday night at 7 p.m. called The Right of the People, where we use the first to defend the second here on my YouTube channel. Also Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, etc., etc. So, come check it out. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the invite. Ghost, this was a really good show. We had some really good discussion. So
yeah,
thank you.
What it's all about is the discussion. And thanks for coming on, Budget. Yeah, please, like I said, one of my favorite podcast shows, whatever you want to call it, every week is on Friday night, The Right of the People. Really, really good conversation, and Budget does a great job. So thanks for coming on, buddy. Hey, you be safe out there and come home safely to your family, okay?
All righty, man. You guys have a good one.
You too, buddy. But Trump, no Trump, regardless, is there anyone out there that you would like to see run in 2020?
Well, she said she's not going to run, but I voted for her last time. It's going to have to be Hillary again. I'm with her.
Okay. No, not everybody's perfect,
I'm looking forward to whatever the alternative to the bipolar or whatever the word is, party garbage. Hopefully there's something viable in there. They didn't quite get the whatever they needed, 10% or something. I think they encroached a little bit closer to having enough participation with the Libertarian Party. I don't think it was the Green, whatever the third party was that is working towards getting onto the primary ballot so they can actually be on the stage.
Was it the Tea Party?
I don't think it was. I think it was Libertarian, right? It's just that there was that guy from Mexico that
have been trying for a while. They're the Libertarian and the Tea Party are probably the biggest of the third party candidates. But yeah.
But once they get to a certain amount, then they show up on stage and are actually part of the debates, like Perot was back in the olden days. And that actually would add, even if they don't have a run for it, it would create a nuance in the the conversation or the debate, and there wouldn't be an ability for them each to just pick sides of a battle line. And now we as constituents have to decide, okay, I like these 3 issues, but these 4 issues, and we have to start weighing things when there's actual conscious thought into which sides they're going to pick, and there's 3 players. I really think that's going to give us the politicians who don't get to hide out like they do now in the bureaucracy.
Yeah, I agree. They're talking out there that Shapiro is trying to get a constitutional convention going, and has, I think this one said 5 million signatures already. The great thing about a constitutional convention is that is something that is very much the right of our people to do if we're not happy with the way government is working, to try to get a constitutional convention. And I think you have to have 35 states sign off on that, if I'm not mistaken. It's 30 something states sign off saying that they would be there and all that. So the 5 million signatures is great, but to get the states to sign off on that. But unfortunately, here's the problem is if you get a constitutional convention to go, and you're talking about changing or rewriting our Constitution, I'm going to go back to what G said earlier. We may not like all of the products that come out of our factory, but our factory is pretty damn good. And it's pretty damn efficient. Do we really want to start going into rewriting what our country is and stands for? Because if you start talking about a constitutional convention, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of compromises, and you're going to start seeing a different face of what America is. I don't think we're going to like it. There's a lot of people on the right and the left that don't believe that a lot of the bills and laws that were created by our forefathers are worthy and they are applicable in today's society. So I think that our structure as a country would look dramatically different in a negative way if we start talking constitutional convention. That's just my opinion. Clover, do you have any thoughts on that at all?
On if we invoke Article 5, is that what we're talking about?
Article 5, yep.
I like the idea of it.
Okay.
And I think you have to look at the makeup of the states.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, I think we're in a good position as far as the states, where we're and that's been started. That's been a push for years. That's not a new thing just by Shapiro. I think somebody out there mentioned Mark Levin had tried it. I think Glenn Beck had pushed it at one time, and so forth and so on. It's been pushed for a while, and there was better times to conduct that. But if we're going to make that push, we need to be very mindful of the states, right? When we make that push, and we're not in a bad position now with the states, but we've certainly been in better positions in recent years. So it's getting to a point that now if we have another, quote unquote, Republican revolution in a lot of your state houses, then it may be a good time. But I think if the Republicans have a strong shift in state legislatures, that I don't think we got a lot to worry about with invoking Article 5.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead.
If it makes that switch, we need to be really concerned at that point. We don't need to touch it.
Right. But let me ask you this, and I'll ask everybody here on the panel, and if they want to chime in, they're more than welcome to chime in. But isn't setting a precedent of invoking Article 5 and bringing up convention, isn't that a dangerous precedent? Because if you start this trend, then as soon as the next time there is a revolution for the left, they're going to start invoking Article 5, and they're going to start their own convention as well. So, I think that there is a trend. The reason why I say that is I think it's dangerous is regardless if we always agree on on all the laws, I think that the part, like I go back to it, changing the foundation and the structure of what has made us who we are, I think is a bad idea. Laws and amendments and all of that are one thing. And yes, there might be some amendments that we agree. I think that it would be awesome to have term limits. I think it would be awesome to do certain things, but I'm also a little worried of what it says to show the world that we don't like what's going on within our country, and that shows us weak. And that's just my opinion. And you guys can actually bring it up if you want.
Okay, well, I'm gonna get on your rear end about that.
First
of all, is the Constitution. The Constitution was written and everything was put into play for us to be able to go back to that and say, hey, we need to change this. We need to add that. Slavery wouldn't have ended without that, for example. Giving black people the right to vote. I mean, it was just so many things that there's a lot of stupid things in there too, like popular voted senators. But, I think we get hung up when we talk about Article 5, when we talk about the Constitution. I think we get really hung up on the Bill of Rights, and we get scared in a way, and we think, oh God, but we can't be touching the Bill of Rights. Well, we're not saying that, but
I'm not saying that either.
Through the history of this country, how many times has the Constitution been amended?
That's right.
It's not an uncommon thing to amend the Constitution.
I have no problem with amending the Constitution. What I say is I do not like the visual of a constitutional convention. It shows the world that we are unhappy with our country. I think that shows a sign of weakness. That's what I'm saying.
Well, but we are, and I don't know that it's a weakness to be unhappy with the way that it's not that you're. I don't know. I get the optics. I get what you're saying about the optics with the other countries, but the reality is that we are unhappy. We're unhappy with the government, and the Constitution is there to restrict said government, and so we need to revisit that and put some more restrictions in play. By God, if they're gonna impose legislation and do crap to us that we don't want, the founders built in a way for us to do that too.
Okay, I'm not. I think that's a good point. I just worry about.
No, I agree with you on an optic standpoint. We agree.
Yeah, I'm saying this is
No.
there's
I don't.
we can do without making the world know that we're unhappy or we're weak. Or
Yeah,
whatever.
where they say
It's
they
not
don't know
showing that we're weak. I don't think it's showing that we're weak. We have 27 amendments, and we're still the most powerful country on the globe, uncontested, right? Well, I guess some people act like they're contesting it, but we're the freest country, and we're not taking anything over. But anyway, so it's a country of the people, for the people, by the people, and all that. And this would be a what do you call it? Like an adaptation based on the needs of the people. And like Clover said, all the stuff that we've accomplished. A couple of things were dumb, prohibition, right? But then because it's an adaptable tool, then we corrected that. So I don't know. I don't think there's that perception. I think if anything, it shows that we're a country made up of, mind and spirit rather than blind obedience to tradition or obligation to some heritage or some whatever the other words, like land or religion, or we're made up of the people, and we're adaptable to be current with what the people want. Because like, for example, space, we're going to eventually have to have space incorporated into it somehow, so there won't be weakness when we own space, right?
Well, I think that you can look at space kind of like the internet. Not one country owns the internet. It's the same thing as not one country can own space. But yeah, that's what you're saying.
We can both agree we could put like the 28th Amendment could be, and we own the internet.
Yeah, you can do all you want, sure, no doubt about it. And I think that that's the whole side is I think that the Constitution is a living, breathing document. It is something that it was built and established to conform to the current political sites of the time. I think it is very much a living document. I just don't. My whole thing was I don't like in the optics, the visual, whatever you want to call it. I don't like the convention, what it says to the rest of the world. That's my whole thing. I have absolutely no problem taking care of amendments and doing all of that. I just don't like the visual of a convention. I just think that that's scary right now.
Be careful calling it a living, breathing document, because that's what the progressive movement believes. And you're talking about Hillary Rodham Clinton, and they see that in a whole different perspective than you. You see it, and I know what you're saying. And what you're saying is you see it as
not in concrete.
The founders built in a way to change what we wanted to change. They see it living, breathing as, who cares what the founders really meant? We can interpret it however we want, and that's not what we mean when we say it's a living document.
Right. Yeah. No, it's just one of those things where, like I said, we're this is the interesting part of who we are in America, and the fact. Here's the thing, and we talked about this at Clover, and I think G was involved. The fact we talked about this offline. I think it was offline. The fact that 21, 22, 23-year-olds were involved in our forefathers. We're talking people. John Adams was a pretty young. I mean, there's these people that are young men. That there were people that were in their 20s that were involved in the resurrection of the first constitutional republic in the world, and they had the forethought to understand. Now, did they see exactly what was going to happen with the internet and all that? No, but they understood how the world works, and they built this document that says this is who we are and this is what we are as a people. And the fact that 200 some odd years later, do we agree on every single thing that's on that document? No, but we can all agree that it's probably a top 3, if not the most important document ever written in the world, was stating out a game plan to have rule by the people. And the fact that we can even have a conversation about Article 5 in a convention is freaking awesome. We don't have to agree on it, but the fact that we can actually, as a people, can have this discussion without being censored and banned and kicked off and thrown in jail in itself is remarkable. And that's got to be one of the coolest things about America is whether or not we always agree with the left or the right or the anti-gunners or the pro-gunners, the conservatives, the liberals, whatever, the fact that we have this conversation is what it's all about. None of us are ever going to agree. We're always going to have some people that disagree, and that's okay. But having the discussion is what it's all about. So it's an awesome thing. Anybody have anything they want to say before we start kind of plugging our stuff? Anybody want to bring up anything? Mike, G, Clover, anyone at all?
No, you know me. I try to stay away from the political talk at times.
I know you do. It's a tough one for you. That's why I didn't call on you a whole lot unless you said that you wanted to jump in. So I respect the fact that you try to stay away from that, and I respect that wholeheartedly. But if there is anything that you want to bring up, go for it. If not, go ahead and plug what you want to plug.
First thing I'll say is if when you was talking about invoking the fifth, I'm more along the lines, if the fifth is invoked, will the question of equality across the board be the precedent? You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing I can really say about that one.
True equality.
True equality for everybody, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and start plugging my stuff right now. So you know how we do it. Please call me at 803-250-1256 or go to www.m-wtactical.com, the one-stop shop where you can check out everything I'm a part of, and a direct link where you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, or do a search for M-W Tactical to find me. Even a link where you can catch up on the Black Man with the Gun podcast with Ken Blanchard and myself, where you can get your M-W Tactical and Black Man with the Gun swag, also by clicking on the store tab on the m-wtactical.com website. We also bringing back the LEO training campaign that you can donate to by going to gofundme.com/LEO training to put some officers in training for a year at no charge to them or their department. The M-W Tactical channel, where we do various reviews or conversations that we put out every Tuesday on GunStreamer. And we now have the M-W Tactical podcast that we're going to put out every Tuesday as well. Go to the link on the website or click on the post that will be posted on the M-W Tactical Facebook page as well, or do a search on your favorite podcast platforms. But most importantly, click on the link to become a Patreon.
Thanks for coming on. And yeah, go make sure you go check out his video. He drops every Tuesday. Mike's involved with a lot of cool stuff, and more importantly, he's a great friend and a great guy. So thanks for jumping on. Appreciate you very much. G, what you got going on?
Thanks for the invite. We just did a chat with the guys that are doing the Clash Bash in southeastern Texas. So I don't know if Clover saw that, but pretty big event coming up next month in your neck of the woods.
Yeah, the Clash, like Kalashnikov? Clash Bash? Okay,
yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. It's a 2-day event that's Kalashnikov centric, or only, I guess you could say. Although you can bring like an SKS or something that shoots, Soviet caliber. And then it's going to be sort of like industry day at the range, where the manufacturers will show up and be at live bays so they can shoot, pull triggers. There'll be a match side. So for 2 days, they'll be doing a match. So people that bring AKs can shoot, but then the same time, there's the spectator side. So you can show up and watch the match, or just hang out at these booths and shoot guns and buy stuff. It's a real gun show. It's out in southeast Texas, and it's the kind of place you can camp at. So it should be pretty interesting to see 2 days worth of most of the Kalashnikov industry in one spot, camping out and having a good time, like food trucks and that kind of stuff for food, and kind of a unique thing. It's the first year they're doing it, and kind of modeling it after another one that happens up in Utah in October.
Man, that's awesome. I hadn't heard about this. I need to go back, and I jumped in for a second when I was driving back to the chat. I couldn't jump in, but I had to go back and watch that because that's something that I'm definitely interested in. I think that'd be a blast to go to.
I just contacted him on Instagram to say, hey, can I help you promote this or whatever? And one of the guys jumped in. It was his first time doing a hangout. So we had been doing a 2-way workshop earlier, and Snob was in there, and he's had an interview with the president of Oklahoma Second Amendment Association. So that guy, that president, had never been on YouTube before on a hangout. So Snob had a first person on a hangout today, and then I had somebody on for the first time today. It's been pretty cool bringing new people onto the mix so they can see you know, just how easy it is to have these conversations in front of people.
Yeah, and once they realize it's not scary as people think, then maybe they get the bug and they start putting stuff out themselves, which is great. So that's awesome. Thanks for doing that. I appreciate it. I have to go look at that one because the Clash Bash sounds awesome to me. And Clover, what you got going on, bud?
Yeah, we got Galloway Precision this week on Firearm Friday. So, yeah, be sure to check that out. And something that has been tossed around is taking Firearm Friday back to a live format, at least on a maybe on a limited basis. Maybe pick a guest that's recorded with us, one that might be really good for a live conversation for a bunch of questions and stuff out there, and then run them through an actual live Firearm Friday. But here's what is kind of needed out there. It's kind of hard to pitch that to these people when there's not guys out there, girls out there, whatever, watching and commenting and stuff like that on the podcast. So they're going to want to see activity in order to agree to do stuff like that. So when these podcasts are released on Friday, if it's something of interest, then be sure you get in there and create a conversation and ask questions and all that good kind of stuff. And hopefully we can work on bringing back the live aspect of that.
Yeah, and that's something that's, you know, and I'll go on to say, I think everyone who hosts a show appreciates everyone that comes out and watches. Tonight was a perfect example. There were a lot of great topics and discussions that we had, but it was driven by a lot of questions and comments from the chat. So, you know, if you're out there, and I understand that to a certain extent, some people use YouTube as their TV or their entertainment for the night, and that's great. We appreciate everyone that watches and puts up with our opinions all we can. But when you have an opportunity that Clover will bring in an industry person, I think it's really important to share that with people in Facebook groups, on Instagram, and different places, because if we're going to bring industry people onto these things, they're going to be nervous. Some of them haven't ever been on a live stream before, and they're going to tell family and friends, and they're going to tell colleagues and all of that. And then there's 15 people that show up and there's crickets out in the chat. So especially when you bring on an industry leader or industry company out there, please help out all you can in sharing that, showing up. And if you do show up, bring a question with you, at least one question, and at least be involved in that, because the last thing we want to have these companies do is have a bad experience and then decide never to go back on a live stream again. So
that's awesome. If 20 people showed up and each brought a question, that would be 20 questions that showed up in the chat, and then the person who's narrating it or whatever, moderating it, could, you know, throw whatever one's appropriate at the person, even if they had nothing to say. If they were the kind of person who's completely, you know, new and scared or whatever, or, you know, shy, giving them a question, 20 questions, that would fill an hour right there, because it's going to take a couple of minutes to ask the question and get an answer. And then if it's not that kind of person, because almost nobody is, and they elaborate on a question for 10 or more minutes, and you've got all these extra questions, what a resource to be able to say, hey, thanks for having you on the show. We had a lot of people watching. Here's, you know, we had 14 people watching. Here's a bunch of questions we didn't even get to, and maybe we can talk about these next time. I mean, that's something that you're giving the host and the person who's the guest. So I think that's a great piece of advice. Thanks.
Yeah, and thanks for Clover for bringing these industry people on the live stream, because we can do it on podcasts all we want, but part of having them live, and I think that, you know, the Walther of the world, the Tandem Cross that came on the old Firearm Friday Live, you know, there were a lot of people that have legitimate questions about their products and companies, and if you don't bring the questions, then all it is at that point is just two people having a discussion. But I think that the whole idea of the audience being involved is very, very important. So anyways, Friday night. And if you're going to watch Friday night's podcast on replay or in a podcast form and audio, you can still ask those questions. Ask them in the comments. The comments don't get utilized on some videos. Ask the questions that you want on comments. I love it. I check my comments every day and I try to answer every day. And the greatest ones were not the ones, hey, great video, great video. As much as I appreciate those, I really do. but I love getting questions. That's what it's all about is information. And when we pass on an answer, it doesn't mean it's the law. It just means that's our opinion on something. But yeah, ask questions and be involved in the discussions. I think that a healthy discussion is the most important thing we can do. So guys, thank you so much. If you're watching in replay or listening on podcast, once again, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up, subscribe if you haven't, click that notification bell. If you're watching on or listening on podcast, go ahead and follow the podcast. Any questions you guys have, please put them in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your opinions, and any questions that you have. You can always email questions to live@ghosttactical.us. Please go check out the Armed Citizen. We actually have a B channel now. I'm not really pushing it, but the channel is Armed Citizen Podcast. So if you want to go subscribe to that as well on YouTube, you can, just in case. But I want to start putting the podcast out there on that channel. So Armed Citizen Podcast is on YouTube, and just put it up a few days ago or a week or so ago. So go check that out. Go check us out on all the podcast forums, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for everyone that will always continue to support the program. Thank you to my patrons. I love you guys. I really do. I can't tell you how much you guys mean to me. You guys make all of this possible. So thank you so much to people that support the channel in any way capacity, but especially the patrons. We shall see you next Tuesday on Tactical Tuesday. We'll see you soon. Semper Fi.